Madam Chancellor, Mr. President, distinguished guests of the Platform Party, parents, guests, and most importantly, the graduates. It's just such a pleasure to be here today to celebrate your graduation. And I just, looking around, and it's an amazingly diverse group. It's so different from what existed when I was sort of on my way through. When Merrick Gertler called me with this offer for the degree of Doctor of Laws, I really didn't know what to make of it. And you know, today sort of brought it into perspective. But I will say at the time, I was very honored and I thought it was pretty cool. So, but until I received the outlining curriculum for today's events, it included the need to address the graduating class, and I felt my anxiety increase a bit. So a little while later, I met him at an event here at the university, and I asked him, you know, what should I say? What would people 45 years my junior want to hear from someone like me? And he said, look, they may be interested in your achievements, be genuine, and don't pontificate, which when you get to be my age is really hard not to do. So I immediately started to think, what could I leave you with that would be witty? And so I started thinking about Confucius-type one-liners, you know, the kind of thing you get in a fortune cookie. And then I realized the closest I would ever get to that was probably my red belt in Taekwondo, so I won't do that to you. I also would have preferred for today's events to have been more of a question and answer period, but I realize that this is not possible. And that way I could have simply answered your questions instead of me uncomfortably talking to you about me and bits of my journey, which unfortunately for you is what we're left with. So I also want to start by saying it would be remiss of me to leave anybody with the opinion or that I somehow got here on my own. That wouldn't be fair. I owe so much to my parents, my family, my friends, colleagues, both past and present, some who are with us today. They've had such enormous impact on me personally, on my career. So look, let's give this a go, and hopefully it's coherent enough for some of it to resonate, with a few of you. So at the beginning, the first 3 years of my life, my parents and I lived with my grandmother, an uncle, an aunt, her husband, and two kids. And not so different than most or many immigrant families. The office of our small fledgling construction business was in the basement of our house. My mother was the secretary, and I remember just always being in the way. The men we employed in those days, and there were a lot because the technology didn't exist then that it does today, so we had many, many more men per job site than you would normally associate with today, would come to our house to pick up the checks on Thursday. In those days, there weren't even checks. They literally had cash in an envelope, and that's how they got paid. And as a result, I got to know these fellas by name. And so in those days, they worked 6 days a week. So if I wanted to spend time with my father, I'd spend Saturdays on, on job sites. And it was like going home for me because I knew everybody, and I really liked it. And when I expressed interest in something, they taught me, and in their own way, they unwittingly became my mentors. Early on, I learned that everybody had something to teach, and it really did form the cornerstone of my perspective. School for me was a challenge. High school can be summarized as too much fun, terrible results. I spent more time to achieve less than pretty much anybody you know. Summer school was required every year to either pick up my failures or improve my grades. But notwithstanding all of that, I applied to and was amazingly accepted at UTM. Now let's also understand that 40 years ago, the marks that I got in with wouldn't even make the laughing bin today. So during the break in the summer, and in addition to summer school, I worked on construction sites where I continue to learn the most basic things. For example, 5 bricks plus 3 bricks equals 8 bricks. Nothing abstract. Tangible results seem to be produced each day. The university began for me, and on the 3rd day of the first week, I attended my first psychology class, and it was a full house. We waited. Eventually, the professor arrived, seemingly disoriented. He scrambled around, found some chalk, scribbled something on the board, ran over, and he grabbed a garbage can. And he picked it up and he put it over his head like this, not like that. And he asked, "Is this garbage can real or imaginary?" I leaned over to my buddy and I said, "If he drops that thing on his head, he'll know it's real." I thought I was quiet about it. Apparently I wasn't. My entire psychology career lasted 10 minutes. It consisted of 8 minutes of waiting and 2 minutes of lecture. As I was leaving the class, I felt my anxiety rising. A couple of months later, I was attending an economics class, which I really enjoyed. In fact, I still do love economics. We were divided into study groups and given an assignment, asked to be prepared to deliver it, our response at the next class. So our group worked our tails off, but we remained uneasy with our conclusions because we weren't sure if they were economic enough. And I don't know what that means, but that's what we said. We attended the class. The professor asked one group at a time to respond, and it went like this. Group 1, what do you say? And the representative of the group would stand up and deliver the group's answer. And so it would be blah, blah, blah. Wrong, sit down. Group 2, what do you say? Blah, blah, blah. Wrong, sit down. And then until it got to us. I stood up to begin to deliver our response. And after 45 seconds, I'm still standing there, and I'm thinking, wow, we're nailing this. And then right at the end, he said, wrong, sit down. In the end, no group got the answer. And so he disappointedly, and I have to be honest with you, when I think back, I think it was a little bit staged. So the professor, disappointing, he said, does anybody have anything to add? And there was a member of our group, his name was Billy. He was the brightest kid in the class, a really smart farm boy from Guelph. And he stood up and said, sir, I think it's a bogus assignment. There's no answer to it because the condition can't exist. And the professor looked like a bit indignant and said, so what do you mean? And Billy went on to explain his answer. And he was going on for 2 minutes. It was a very complex economic thesis that couldn't exist. And at the end of the lecture, or at the end of his answer, the professor said, congratulations, you're the first guy to ever get this. He colored in some of the detail we weren't sophisticated enough to know at that point. And he said at the end of the class, does anybody have any questions? So I stood up and asked the following brilliant question. So given that this can't possibly exist, do we need to know this stuff for the exam? My brief but promising economics career came to an abrupt end that day, and as I left the class, I again felt my anxiety rising. It was becoming apparent that the school thing just wasn't working out, and so with a little bit of coaching from the university, coaching was a nice word, it was decided I was better off to pursue something other than a degree. So I happily went back to construction, where there were no more impossible answers or imaginary garbage cans. It was a world where when it rained, we simply got mud. It wasn't, it's just the way it is. But I knew that I wanted to contribute and be part of the team that I grew up admiring, and I wanted to be taken seriously by them. I needed to create my own value. And I knew that in order to get their attention without a university degree to sort of bedazzle them with, I had to achieve this in more rudimentary ways. So I ran literally instead of walked, which always gets everybody's attention. I worked weekends, I showed up early, I stayed late, and I measured my progress by the nature of the conversations I was engaged in. They were becoming more balanced. I was being asked almost as many questions as I asked. And as my responsibilities grew, so did the number and complexity of those relationships and the subject matter that came with them. So as time went on, it was becoming apparent that conditions were changing and our customers were becoming more sophisticated. We responded by hiring planners, architects, chartered accountants, engineers. Essentially, we began to form the professional team, which is expected and required today. Now, that in and of itself doesn't mean much to you folks, because this was in a time before computers, never mind the internet or cell phones, or even before Xerox. So we tried to stay ahead of the curve. Today, we continue to build our company responsibly, one customer at a time, by doing what we said we were going to do when we say we're going to do it. Our philanthropy, as you've heard, is focused in both physical and mental health care and healthcare education. And our primary goal is to try to improve patient outcome. It is and remains the most difficult of all the tasks that we perform, that we have to perform well. But when we get it right, it's also the most rewarding on so many levels, and it really does confirm that it is better to give than to receive. As I was writing it, I felt the need to change the ending of this speech many, many times, but I kept coming back to the recurring observations and assessments that I have experienced along the way. You will have heard most of these. For me, they're truisms, but I offer them to you with the hope that you find them somewhat useful. They are: success comes in many forms, not always measurable by money. No one I know has ever achieved success without hard work and passion. If you love what you do, your work will never feel like a job. Respect isn't for hire. It can only be earned. And trust forms the basis of all relationships, and without it, there is no future. Anxiety, something you've heard me say, I believe is omnipresent. It's especially prevalent in younger years. How can it not be? We haven't got much experience. We don't always know what direction to go in. And we quite often don't even know what we want to do. But every journey starts with the first step. So I say take it, regardless of where it may lead. And the experience that you gain along the way will develop the confidence required to help you manage it. I want to say that both failure and success are results and teachers. Do your best to enjoy and learn from them. And most importantly, preserve your integrity, because in the end, it's your good name that you want to live with. I was fortunate in life to know, early in life, to know what I liked and to have had the opportunity to pursue what I still love doing today. But we know now that knowledge-based economies fare better in today's global economic environment. Your hard work, educational success, helps to ensure Canada's ability to compete within it. So in closing, I'd like to congratulate the proud parents who I know have sacrificed so much to see this day through. And I want to congratulate the graduates on a job well done, and to thank you in advance for the contributions that you will undoubtedly make in our country's future. With that, I offer you a tip of my imaginary hat, and I wish you a bon voyage. Thank you.